the question is, how do we educate people in smaller organizations or in larger organizations or even teams within a larger organization? So at least we understand what we're all talking about.
Right.
So, and then how open are people to even the idea of getting educated or spending money on, education for these things?
Okay, I'm probably gonna go off of some people's reservation here now. They're not gonna, this may be, mark the time code because this may be editable
No,
here.
okay.
Um, I believe in this work that education is by doing. Um, I think that we've wasted too much time in the corporate spectrum of trying to get everyone on board with I did a presentation one time to a group of people at a conference that I called the 3 ways to kill your innovation program, or killing your innovation program in 3 simple steps. And there were a couple of things, and one of the steps was declaring everyone's an innovator, because as soon as you do that, you devalue the people who really have that skill, right?
Right.
The other thing you can do is that you declare that everything is an innovation, right? So you put the same weight on somebody who says, well, the temperature of the coffee is just too not hot enough. That idea gets some sort of meaning in the idea, in the suggestion box, the same as if something was actually a new business idea. So there's all these different sorts of things, and we try to, and I think that what you really want people to do is you want 2 things. You want and then I'm going to talk about this kind of in the enterprise level. And I think it in startups is kind of it happens because you don't have the time or money or resources to focus on more than one thing at a time. In an enterprise, you got all these different areas where there are distractions because there's so many different areas. So the point I wanted to make was this: is that there is an importance to getting your population of leaders, and how you define leaders and at how many levels of the organization is every organization is kind of independent on that.
Right.
But they need to understand your purpose as a company and the challenges you face going forward. What are the types of problems you anticipate in the coming years, and so that they begin to know what to look for, right? You
Right.
don't want a sales guy who's going to go call on one of your most important customers. You don't want the first time they've ever heard about augmented reality or artificial intelligence to be when the customer puts it in an RFP that they have to respond to,
Right.
right? So if your company is facing a challenge, you think going forward on robotics and automation, you need to be talking about that in some way, shape, or form, and educating people about the long-term problems that you face early, so that when they talk to customers or when they see things in the marketplace, they recognize them as the possible solutions to things that are they're facing in the long term, right? So that I think that's kind of the role of education in the innovation space, is to teach people about the problems that we want to look to solve. Okay. On the other side of that coin, I think it's that people learn by doing, and that you need to not try to give everybody a process, but try to build people.
Right.
Keep
Okay.
the process as simple as you can,
Right.
but build people who can interact with the process and who have the ability to pivot or move or change or see things as they change without instituting a tremendous amount of bias. And what you should do is build better people, not build better experiments themselves, right? If you build
Right.
better people, they will do a better job of the
Well,
experimentation.
people have to design the experiments. So if they don't know how to do it, if they don't even agree with it, if they don't appreciate the value of it, they're just not going to do a good job. So, and then, giving people the right tools to actually make it easy to do.
Right.
We know people that do experiments all the time. I mean, everybody does experiments, even if they call it so or not. But these experiments are all over the place in Google Documents, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Slack, email, chat. It's all over the place, and nobody knows what's going on. And then all of that information is lost
That's right.
after a project is completed. And so,
Yeah.
We just keep
It's in
doing the same thing over and over and
the other
over.
thing I'll add to that. That's exactly right. And the other thing I'll add to that, Darius, is that you may have a team of, let's say, 5 people over here working on something that learned something really important that this team of 4 people on the other side of the country needed to know about.
Right.
That could have really advanced their understanding of how to deal with the customer, and if they had learned it from someone else. And so connecting those dots with those teams is vitally important in order to speed things up.
Could have
Uh,
saved them a month.
yeah, absolutely,
You
absolutely.
know, just add these months up, and they just keep adding up.
That's right. That's
Right.
right. And then again, sometimes it's a technical thing that something learns, or sometimes it's a customer, doesn't want to do business a certain way. So why would you go in and recommend that again?
Right.
Or maybe it's there's not a consumer need, or maybe somebody else is doing. Maybe they discovered, hey, wait a minute, there's this company up in Chicago that already has a patent on this, and oh well, nobody knew. How did they share that? So I think that there's a certain place for tools and education and cross pollination that really exist and is a huge need
Right.
in any organization. How they communicate
Okay.
and what they learn. How do you communicate the learnings? That's probably the most important part of the experiment process itself. Is how do you account for what you've learned uh, in a real way, truthful way, without bias,
Right.
and then share that learning.
And how do you, yeah, how do you communicate even? How do you even, like, you can look at an experiment, you can look at the metrics. So the metrics are easier to quantify. Traffic went up, it went down, it didn't change. Okay. But the intangible lessons, somebody needs to go through and actually write that down in a way that is useful for other people, not only when they communicate, but also to be used in search. So what
Hmm.
we're talking about across the enterprise, this is called search, right? So
Right.
search is a major part of our work right now. And it's a very powerful tool if you can search quickly the data that's available in an enterprise. That is like a
Right.
killer advantage. So those are all like the really interesting intricacies of getting this work done, and I think that's why there's so much potential to get better.
There
That's what
is.
excites me. So
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a huge potential to do that. I'll give you another example just from my own experience of, running multiple cohorts in different locations. And when you're running a cohort of, let's say, 3 to 4 different teams that are working together, and they're not working together, they're working on independent ideas, but they're working either co-located, or at least they're communicating with each other in some form or fashion. Having that weekly readout is critical, where they hold each other accountable and where they talk about what they've learned, and each each of the groups gets the benefit of the learning from the other group. Now, finding ways to do that with an individual cohort is not that difficult. If you're running multiple cohorts in different parts of the world,
right,
it becomes really difficult. And I've learned that firsthand. Is that you've got, when you have different teams in different parts of the world that are both learning on completely different time schedules, how do you coordinate in such a way as that learning doesn't get completely lost and there's some advantage to that? Um, and some of the tools that we have today, whether it's, Slack or Teams or Skype or whatever, makes it somewhat better. But you're right on the how do you search that out and how do you catalog it and document it in a reasonable way.